All right. Sadly, my class is probably going to be looking at this and be like, you never announced it in the classroom that you're going to be doing a live. And I'm trying to go ahead and get this class done and this lecture done because this is going to be a series of lectures. It's going to be 3 lectures, as a matter of fact. So this is going to be the first one. I'll do the next lecture in the next day or so, and do the last lecture this weekend, because this week's talking point is basically on the psychology of racial battle fatigue, and it's not only that. But it's basically on how all of this stuff, hits you. So the first lecture that I'm doing today is going to be on racial battle fatigue, the toll of everyday racism. The next lecture that's going to come after this in a day or two is going to be racial trauma and intergenerational stress. And the next lecture after that will be systemic racism, mental health, and resistance. I see you, Ether, and I'll respond to you. Direct message. I've been out of the house all day, so this lecture is actually being streamed on both YouTube and TikTok. So I'll probably end up responding to people in either place. So I'm going to try to get through this within the next 20 or 30 minutes because I'm not trying to keep people here. Because the other point about this is that these are very heavy subjects. All of these lessons are heavy subjects because we're talking about stuff that affects people in every way. So whether you're African American, or whether you're a person of color, whether you're living in the United States, or whether you're in the UK, or whatever the case is going to affect you. Even if you're white, it's going to affect you somehow, because sometimes you have to understand that as a person of privilege, your privilege protects you from this stuff. So this is going to be one of those conversations that we're going to have a talk about today. I'm going to hop right into it because the only way to really address this stuff is to talk about it and to get it out there in the open and just to have those dialogues. So let's start from here, right? When we talk about racism, and we talk about the lived experiences of people in this country. And by this country, I'm talking about the United States. But this can apply to pretty much any country. We often focus on those big dramatic moments. We talk about the laws that get passed, and we talk about the protest that makes headlines and the court cases that define an era. And all of that's important. Don't get me wrong. All of that matters. But today, we're going to talk about something that doesn't hit the front page. And what I mean by that is something that's quieter. Something that, for a lot of folks, it's just everyday life. And what I mean for a lot of folks, I'm talking about Black Americans. I'm talking about people of color. I'm talking about Black people in the UK. And this is something that we call racial battle fatigue. Now, if you guys saw the mini lecture I put up earlier, it's about 3 minutes long. It was just kind of quick and to the point. This is going to expound on that. So this term, if you missed that lecture, this term was developed by a Dr. William A. Smith. And it describes something that many people, Black folks, brown folks, indigenous folks, have been feeling for a very long time now. It's that exhaustion. It's that weight you carry when you walk into a room and you wonder, will I be taken seriously? Will I be treated fairly? It's that stress that you that you've got when you have to work twice as hard to get half the credit. That if you make one mistake, it won't just be about you, it'll be about all the people that look like you. And over time, over weeks, months, years of that, it wears on you and it takes a toll. So this isn't just about feelings. What I'm talking about isn't about just how you feel. We've got studies, we've got research, and they show that racial battle fatigue manifests in very real, very physical ways. And so you see it in anxiety, and that keeps you up at night. You see it in hypervigilance, that's always scanning, always watching, always wondering, did that person just say what I think they said? Or high blood pressure, because stress doesn't just sit in your head. It lives in your body. And the reason this happens is simple. Your body is always on alert. Because when you live in a world where bias, sometimes explicit, sometimes subtle, in an ever-present reality, your nervous system never really gets to relax. And that is no way to live. So you might be wondering, why does this happen? And the answer is, this is what happens when systems are built in a way that forces people to prove over and over again that they belong. Have you ever been the only black person in a meeting? The only Latina in a classroom? Or the only Muslim in a job interview? You feel that pressure. And it's something that I've had to deal with for years at the job that I'm no longer a part of. I was not the only black person that was on my team. I was the only black person in the whole department. And people treat you differently. I've had people who attempted to talk down to me or put me in my place. I've had to deal with that. And you always have to be the better person in responding to them. You can't just snap and just go off the way that you want to go off on them. You have to kind of put whatever you feel in and you push that deep down inside you, and you have to be better than. So what I'm talking about, this isn't just about overt racism. No one has to call you a slur. No one has to deny you a job. Sometimes it's a look. It's a hesitation. A moment where someone doubts you just enough to make you wonder if you're imagining it. And that's what we mean when we talk about microaggressions. Those small daily indignities that alone might not seem like much, but over time they chip away at you, and eventually you're tired, you're drained, you're done. And that's the example of what racial battle fatigue is. And a lot of people are probably wondering, it's like, what do you do about it? And it's an easy answer, but it's also a difficult answer. And let's be real, this is not the kind of things that get solved overnight. None of the stuff that we're talking about is stuff that's going to get solved overnight. But that doesn't mean that we're powerless. There are steps that we can take. First, we name it. And that's one of the things I'm doing in this class. We're naming it, that it's racial battle fatigue. We call it what it is. Because too often people experiencing this kind of stress are told that they're overreacting or that they're being too sensitive. No, this is real. This is measurable. And ignoring it does not make it go away, just like racism. You can't just ignore it or be colorblind and think that it's just going to disappear. It doesn't happen. And second, we got to take care of ourselves. That means sometimes we have to set boundaries. That means seeking out spaces where we don't have to explain ourselves all the time. That means finding community, because the truth is you don't have to carry this alone. And the third, we change the system, because it's not enough to just help people cope. And we've been getting plenty of that. People want us to just cope. They want us to take medicine or go see a therapist for something that is not our fault. Something that we're told that it's in our head. So we need the workplaces and the schools and the institutions that don't force people into a constant state of stress just to exist. We need to build environments where people don't have to wonder if they belong, because they know they do. And I'm not saying any of this stuff to make people feel discouraged, because as history has taught us anything, it's that people find a way to endure. And black people, brown people, indigenous people, other people of color have found ways to endure in this country, in the United States. So yes, racial battle fatigue is real and it's a burden, but it is not the end of the story. Because what we've seen, what we know is that when people come together, when they stand up, when they demand something better, change is not just possible, it's inevitable. And for those of you guys who are able to kind of make this little lecture tonight, I appreciate it. And I look forward to the discussion that we're going to continue to have on the discussion boards and other things. But I want people to understand that I have so many stories of just racial battle fatigue by myself. But I also know that everybody else out there has the exact same stories. There's a few years ago where I'm driving with my wife and we're coming out of the garage of our apartment, and we drive out and a white guy turns to us and calls my wife a dumb N-word. I told my wife to stop, and I get out of the car and I immediately addressed him. And I videotaped it. And there was a whole write-up in the Washington Post about this. And part of the reason why is because this same guy decided that he felt threatened after he called me trash and threatened to beat me up and all this kind of other stuff, because I approached him to correct him about calling my wife out of her name, about using a racial slur towards her. And so I'm talking to this guy, and then later on that night, I'm driving back on my motorcycle and he's talking to the police. And I recorded that. He admits to saying it. He admits to all this other stuff. And then they started taking pictures of my license plate, and before you know it, he's trying to get a protection order against me and claiming that I threatened to kill him. How do you think that made me feel? When we start talking about racial battle fatigue, it's even in situations like this. I'm defending my wife because a white guy was calling my wife a racial slur. And he's running to the courts because he's about to lose his job. The video went viral. He got kicked out of the apartment complex. He loses his job. He's trying to find any way to punish me for calling him out. Do you think that that situation was just over and done with at that time? No, it wasn't over and done with. What ended up happening is that I had to live with that for the rest of my days. I have to still deal with that part of stuff for the rest of my days. And it is not easy because my wife has to deal with that. I gave an example of being being at the store in another video. But there is something I remember when I first got married. I got married 2 days before September 11th. And I remember I was working at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and I'm Muslim, visibly Muslim. And I remember when I was getting on the metro in DC, and I'm about to go hop on a train, that a police officer rushes up to me. And he wants to see what I'm writing. He's demanding to see what I'm writing. He wants to know that, I'm not a threat. I was writing down code for the website that I was just working on. I've had to deal with instances of people wanting to push my wife in front of the train, all after September 11th. But all of this is also part of racial battle fatigue, because that means that we have to be hyper vigilant all the time. We always have to pay attention to everybody and everything around us. My blood pressure is always up because I'm always in spaces where I don't necessarily feel like I belong, even though I know that I belong in those spaces. But if you know this and you understand this, how do you deal with it? Like I said, we can't just wish it away. We can't just say, oh, I'm just going to go to therapy, or you got to take a pill for it. You don't do that. What happens is that you end up sticking with these experiences, and they stick with you for the rest of your life. Have you ever been in a situation being the only minority on a team and being yelled at by a manager? And that doesn't go over very well with me at all. One manager tried to do that. He got threatened by me, and he refused to sign my paycheck after that. Because I'm the type of person that I don't allow people to talk down to me. Because I feel like our people have gone through way too much to be subjugated to any type of abuse, any type of maltreatment. But that's also another reason why I teach classes like this, because I want people to understand that regardless of your skin color, regardless of your ethnicity, regardless of your religion, regardless of your gender, your background, or anything else, that you have to learn how to take up for yourself. You have to know the history. You have to understand why these systems exist. You have to understand that if you are of a particular persuasion, that you need to understand that your privilege has power, and that you cannot just use your power any way you seem fit and think that everything is going to be okay. Because everybody is human. Everybody still has to exist. But some of us, we still have to live with these experiences. We still have to move forward with our lives. But the thing is, these experiences stick. That stress is internalized in our bodies. That high blood pressure and hypervigilantism, it sticks with us. So as much as I would like to say, hey, I have a magic pill that's going to take all of this stuff away, and I'm going to talk about this, but I'm also going to give you the answer. I can't give you the answer, because I can only suggest what we need to do. But it is going to be up to you. It's going to be up to everybody to actually put forth the effort to make sure that we're going to start changing the system. If anybody has ever noticed anything about all of my classes so far, I'll always talk about a section on what we need to do. And besides what we need to do, how we need to do it. So when I'm talking to you guys, it's not just about, yeah, we got a problem. Yeah, this is a problem. Racism is a problem. So is prejudice. So is colorism. So is classism. So is caste and the whole racial casteism. So is Jim Crow and the new Jim Crow and all of this stuff. I'm not just talking about all this stuff that's affecting us. I'm also saying, hey, this is how we need to change the system. This is what we need to do. Yes, definitely, sister. The hypervigilance never goes away. because you can be anywhere at any time. Anywhere at any time, and you're going to be stressed. I can tell you right now that every black person in the United States, if a police car gets behind them, their heart rate shoots up immediately. Their blood pressure goes up immediately. Because we never know that, is this time going to be our last time? You never know what's going to happen. You don't know that you're going to be the next person that's going to be on the news. My wife gets so stressed with police cars that she starts to hyperventilate. Because again, you never know when your time's going to be the last. When you're probably going to get somebody that's going to be trigger happy. Somebody that's just looking for an excuse. I posted up an article about the short film called The Incident, where a young man was leaving his barbershop and all of a sudden shots rang out. And every camera that was around there caught the whole thing. And the police lied about it. They said that the young man was being violent towards them and that he instigated the whole thing. And then a journalist had to sue for the body cams. And this happened in Chicago. And they got the body cam footage only to see that after the incident, the police got together and started trying to make up stories, started trying to make up lies. And you know what came out of this in December of 2023? The city of Chicago came together with a collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police that says that after an incident, police can now turn their cameras off. Even more so than that, they can go back and delete the footage. Now, how do you think that makes us feel? This young black man was murdered in cold blood. Police tried to cover it up. And we're supposed to back the blue? How is any of this stuff going to help us feel any better? It's going to help us deal with the racial battle fatigue. It's going to help us deal with hypertension and everything else, with the stress that we have to internalize. We see our people get murdered on television almost on a weekly basis. And I can assure you, as many protests as I've been to, I get tired. And I'm sure everybody else get tired because we are always protesting. We're always advocating. We're always trying to hold people accountable, and they're never held accountable. And it wears down on us. It wears down on us collectively. It wears down on us individually. There's a question that says, could we learn not only to dismantle racism, but help people heal from its consequences? Yes, we can. And I work with a lot of people that deal with that. I have colleagues that have anti-racist organizations, and I have colleagues who are therapists and counselors that's working on this stuff. But guess what? To be honest with you, we need more therapists and counselors. We need more clinicians. We need more social workers because we don't have enough. Trying to even get seen today is like a 6-month wait at the least. When people need help like right now, what are they going to do? We don't have enough people. We really don't have enough people. So we can still learn about it. We can learn how to dismantle it. But we're also going to need somebody out there to go to school, to do the work, to become that therapist, become that counselor, become that advocate, and start having these conversations. And don't get me wrong, you don't necessarily have to become a medical professional in order to help people heal. You can also start up a group. I go to a group every Monday, typically around 6:30, 7 o'clock. It's for people of color that's dealing with mental health conditions, or they're dealing with trauma or grief or anything else like that. Any one of you can do just that. You can put together a group and you can say, you know what? For my community, I'm going to have these conversations. If we need to just do a group just with people of color, if we need to do a group with just white people, if we need to group just Latinos and indigenous or whatever, we need to start looking internally and saying, how can I help? That's exactly right. Grassroots organizations. You need to start putting together those groups. You need to start looking inwardly on how we can actually fix us and heal us, because it's not going to be easy. We don't necessarily have the amount of professionals that we need to serve every community. When you're looking at one therapist for every several thousands of people, it's hard. So I'm not gonna hold you guys. I said I was gonna try to keep it down to 30 minutes as much as possible. Like I said, this is the first of 3 lectures, and this follows the studies that we're already looking at in the classroom. So in our class, so the class for this is actually Roots of Racism, Bias, Prejudice, and Systemic Oppression. We're currently on week 5 out of 8. And so in week 5, we were actually talking about things such as racial battle fatigue and, racial trauma and intergenerational stress and systemic racism, mental health and resistance. And I'm doing 3 lectures for this particular week only because mental health is kind of like my really big thing. That's where I spend a lot of my time. That's where I spend a lot of time lecturing outside of being on TikTok. So I get to talk about this on TikTok, but outside of TikTok and outside of my professional work, I do a lot of advocacy with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, pretty much throughout Northern Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. So I'm in Baltimore at any given time. I'm in Philly at any given time. I'm down at Falls Church, Fairfax, Alexandria in Virginia at any given time. That's just kind of where I am. Last weekend, I was in Annapolis having a conversation on mental health with regards to men. And the name of the session was, the burdens men carry. And so I had a all-male panel that I was doing on that. So my next lecture, I'm going to try to do it roughly around 9:30 tomorrow, as this is Ramadan for me and lots of other Muslims. We spend our time fasting and praying, and I'm breaking my fast around 6-ish, and we don't finish praying till roughly around 9 o'clock, and then I'm trying to get back home, which is about a 30-minute drive. So I'm going to attempt to do the next lecture, which is going to be racial trauma and intergenerational stress tomorrow at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as always, if you join late and you want to kind of catch up on this, these lectures are recorded and simultaneously streamed to YouTube. So they can always be accessed via YouTube. You can go to my channel. It's in my Ramadan Kareem. And thank you very much, MCB. You can always go back to YouTube and you can watch the lectures there. You can recap any of the stuff. But like I said, I'm trying, at first, when I first started, I think my first week, it was about an hour and a half lecture, and I'm pretty sure I was wearing people out. But I'm just trying to do 30 minutes at a time. I'll do today, I'll do tomorrow. The third lecture is going to be systemic racism, mental health, and resistance. And that's going to also going to be roughly about 30 minutes or so. And if you're on the classroom, in the Google Classroom, you don't necessarily have to do the discussions or the assignments or the quizzes. And I've actually suspended the assignments for the last 2 weeks because I know how much they've been wearing people out. Some of this stuff is very heavy. And there's at least one student that just did a whole dump and gave me about a 6-page paper. Love reading the paper, but I can only imagine the internal work that was taken in order to produce that paper. So I want people to really get a chance to digest this. We can have these conversations, if we can do any of the discussions or whatever, or we can even, I'll try to put up videos piece by piece as I can throughout the day and throughout the week. as I'm doing this, but I want to keep having these conversations. And if you guys post up your own thoughts, personally, I would love it if you guys would post up your thoughts on this. Yeah, Lin Lan. 13th was a heavy hitter for a lot of people, and I think I like lost a lot of people once they watched 13th and once they started getting into some of the topics and stuff. It's heavy. It is very heavy. Yes, my class is completely open to the public. It is not paywalled. You can join. You don't even have to participate, but all of the videos go up there. All of the course material goes up there. That means the PDFs, the book chapters that we cover, everything goes up there. So you have access to everything. I have almost 800 people in my class. And I told people when the class first started, you can audit the class. You do not have to comment on everything. You do not have to do the discussion. You do not have to do the assignments. And I told people that if it is the class info, you can get the information in my profile. So there's a link tree, and this is the very first link that's up there. It's Roots of Racism. It's site 3340, Roots of Racism, Bias, Prejudice, and Systemic Oppression. But there's some people I told them if the class gets too heavy, protect your mental health. You got to protect your mental health. And if you need to drop the class, drop the class. And I've actually had very few people to drop the class. To make it all the way from week 0 to week 5 and to lose, I would say less than 20 people out of 800, it's not that bad. You can just click the link to join the class through my profile. So you go to my profile, click on the link tree. It'll be the first thing that pops up there. It's Google Classroom. Once you click on it and sign in with your account, you'll be joined to the class. Yeah, I can tell you that this particular class is kind of it weighs on you. And I have so many different people in my class. I mean, I've told people before, I have white people, I have black people, I have indigenous, I have one person that's specifically Cree, I have somebody else that's Cherokee, I got Blackfoot, I have Latin Americans in my class, I have people from Argentina, Colombia, I got people all across Europe, I have Canadians, I have people in Denmark, Netherlands, Korea, Japan, China, Australia, New Zealand, Denmark, Ireland, Scotland. Then we got people from all over Africa. So my class is really, it's a lot. And trust me, even though you guys may only see the discussion posts at times, I get pegged with lots and lots of DMs and lots of private messages. And I try to do my best to get back to everybody. And it is a lot. So I'm still somewhat about half a week behind on responding to everybody and some of their assignments. I go through, I read every discussion post, I read every assignment. I try to get back with you guys and at least give a comment. So my comment is sometimes 2 or 3 paragraphs. Sometimes my comments is only 1 paragraph or even a few sentences. No problem, Layla. Hey, Empress. So this is yeah, I am going to do a second semester. There's already another class that I have set up for summer, and there's already some people that signed up for that class. And so the summer class, it was listed on my profile for a while, and then I took it down for a bit. So that class is Movements That Matter, and that's the psychology of resistance. And I was actually really looking forward to that class because the reason why I was going to the whole psychology of resistance is because of what's going on now in our country. What's going on now with our government? What's going on now with, the powers that be trying to undo everything that was done in civil rights. And so that psychology of resistance, I want people to understand what to do, what not to do, how to move, because I want you guys to go out there informed. If you're going to go out there and protest, if you're going to go out there and start holding your representatives to task on everything, or if crap hits the fan and we're being subjugated up under dictatorship, I want people to know what to do and how to go about doing it and how to keep themselves out of trouble. From a psychology standpoint, I'm not a lawyer. That's not my thing, but I can at least tell you what's going on in the minds of people when they're doing these things and how you should think when you're going forward on that. So just know, I'll put that class back up as we're getting down to the last few weeks, because there's this week and then there's week 6 and 7. That's going to be more classes, but week 8 is actually going to be kind of a lesson in how do we actually make change. So there is a capstone for the class where I want people to kind of submit based off of what they learn, how they're going to go through and affect social change. Are they going to go and talk to their family? Are they going to talk to their community? Are they going to talk to their friends? Or are they going to organize? What things are you guys going to do in order to move forward to change things? Because we can't just talk about it. Talking about it's all well and good, it's great, but we need to actually start changing. We need to start affecting that social change, because we are in unprecedented times. If anybody is paying attention to the news and everything else that's going on, and I have friends that completely avoid the news because it is too much. And if you are an empath, you're getting overstimulated. We need to start teaching each other. And I don't just teach a particular set of people. I am teaching everybody. I want everybody to learn, even if this feels uncomfortable. Even if it feels uncomfortable for you. And I know that there are people who are white, and this class is making them feel very uncomfortable because they are learning about things that they never had to experience. They're learning about people that in some cases they never had to interact with. And then they're trying to find out, how do they become an ally? I'm having these conversations because I want everybody to benefit. It's not about trying to make anybody feel bad. That is not my MO. I'm not trying to make people feel bad. I'm trying to lift people up. And as I've mentioned plenty of times before in this class, this isn't a thing about racism. This isn't an issue about white versus black, or black versus Latino, or anything else. What people need to understand that's going on in this country, it is about the wealthy and those who are rich versus the middle class and the poor. And when we start looking at the racial caste systems, as we already covered, this is the stuff that we have to look at, because when they started justifying slavery in this country, they did so by separating the classes. Because at one point in time, you had the poor whites and the blacks allied, and they wanted to make sure they separated that. And the people with the money, they started putting these laws in effect. They started coming up with these systems. And when I mentioned to people that, hey, at one point in time, college was free, but college was free until black people wanted to start getting an education. Then they started charging for college. There's so much history that came about because they wanted to subjugate a people. Anytime where you have minority groups throughout history in the United States that was doing good and they were doing better, they went and destroyed those towns and those communities. But why? It was because the rich had an issue with it. It wasn't always just about strict racism. The 13th Amendment is about racism as much as it is about making sure that there is always a class of people that they can enslave. Because the 13th Amendment states you have these rights unless convicted of a crime. And when you're convicted of a crime, guess what? They'll lease you out to these farms for $2. They'll lease you out to be a firefighter in California, putting out forest fires for $1.50. And then once you get out, you have no rights whatsoever. So I'm not trying to talk everybody's ear off. I'm past my time. I appreciate you guys sticking here, staying around. I'm going to finish smashing my food that I have still sitting in front of me. They had tandoori chicken tonight, so I can enjoy that and see if I can get some rest as well. But I would like for you guys to just do some thinking on this. Do some thinking, do some reading. I'm going to be in it for the long haul. I've seen several of professors that are saying there's not going to be a semester 2. It's been a bit much for them. I'm going to keep pushing as much as I can, and we'll just keep having these conversations. I'll keep doing the lives and I'll keep doing the videos, and if everybody keeps showing up, I'll keep teaching. So, you have a good night, everyone. For everybody on YouTube, thank you for joining. I know this was a last second thing, but tomorrow, 9:30, Thursday, 9:30, next 2 lectures, and we'll continue having these conversations. Have a good night, everyone.